improving ballistic missile defenses. Those are important. He supported the joint use of bases. He supported cooperative peacekeeping activities. He supported humanitarian assistance and disaster relief, joint activities in outer space and cyberspace. So it's a big agenda on which we are now able to actively cooperate. And it seemed to me, as someone who had most of his experience in this field back in the 1970s, 60s, 70s, 80s, when it was hard to get much started, this is a very welcome development. The cooperation, I think, is extremely beneficial to us, and I trust for Japan as well. So I look at the way in which the partnership is developing, and I only wish I could be a part of it. More frustrating in the old days.
Larry, if you don't mind, I'd like to add something from the economic side, which has an indirect effect on regional security, and that's Japan's leadership in the TPP 11. We pulled out of the Trans-Pacific Partnership. We reduced the number of partners from 12 to 11, and the Japanese stepped up to save the Trans-Pacific Partnership, basically, at 11 members. They worked very hard, particularly with the Australians, to get the 11 remaining partners in the Trans-Pacific Partnership to agree, basically, to the existing text with a few deletions or a few suspensions of some of the articles. But at the APEC summit in Da Nang in November, the TPP 11 announced basic agreement on a way forward. And with Japan's leadership, I think we'll see the conclusion of that agreement and the formation of one of the world's largest free trade areas, even without the United States. So that has been a very strong leadership role that the Japanese have played. And where it impinges on security is that the Trans-Pacific Partnership not only benefits us all economically, it would have benefited the United States economically if we'd stayed in it, but it was strategic. It was strategic in the sense that it knit a group of like-minded countries together economically. It was strategic in the sense that it gave those countries an alternative to accommodating themselves to the Chinese economy. It allows them to diversify their trading partners. It doesn't exclude China from the region, but it just helps them diversify their economies, which is good for us and it's good for regional security.
Great. Thanks for that, David. Going back to the question of the way the partnership has evolved, I noted that in the national security strategy that was released by the administration last December, it got a lot of press, because more negative press than positive, because of its kind of America First theme. But one of the things that the press did not pick up was actually the reference to Japan, which said that the U.S. welcomes and supports Japan's leadership as a critical U.S. ally in addressing regional threats. And I thought that sounded interesting, and so I actually looked at every NSS for the last 3 years, and it's the first time that it's ever referred to Japan's leadership. And now you could say that that's an accident, but in fact we've all been involved in drafting these government documents, and it's almost certainly not an accident. So I think it also shows a realization, and which is a good thing for us from Washington, that actually welcomes and supports that new leadership role from Japan. I wanted to turn to the greatest current threat in Asia, and particularly Northeast Asia, and that's North Korea. And I wanted to start by asking Mr. Nishi, you had mentioned that, and I think it's really an interesting insight, that up until now, time has been on Kim Jong-un's side. From now on, time is not on his side. It runs against him, which is very interesting. I wanted to ask, why do you think the economic sanctions, which haven't worked thus far, and obviously it's a regime that doesn't seem to care that its people suffer from the economic sanctions, why would those sanctions make a difference going forward?
The sanctions, the particularly important part of the sanction is the financial aspect, as the United States did as the Bank Delta Asia case. So this time the two, give more sanctions of the financial aspect. Nowadays, the Chinese banks faces very difficult situation in their relations with the United States. They are warned that if they have support to the to Chinese companies with trading with North Koreans, they may be cut off from the dollars network, which is really crucial message to all banks all over the world. And it is getting more and more serious. And also, my friend in the Ministry of Finance, Ministry of Foreign Affairs kindly advised me that regular telephone call from President Trump to Secretary Xi Jinping is quite meaningful, because President picks up some minor issues, but a serious issue that so-and-so company is violating the sanctions. Xi Jinping, unfortunately, not very familiar with these small companies. But at the same time, this is quite devastating to his face against to the President Trump. So what he reacted after the telephone call is calling his staff and told this company, and why not I'm informed, and blah, 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 blah. So the Chinese government is getting more serious than ever for sanctions. And there are numbers of clues that we are informed that companies, particularly facing the Sino-North Korean borders, are cutting down its relations with North Korean companies. One more important thing is the PLA's attitude, particularly its Shenyang Military District area, which is getting tougher position against North Korea. That's what I found from intelligence reports, but detail is yet to be seen. So I think there are some differences than ever. Chinese side is getting more serious than ever. So this is becoming meaningful for all of us, I think.
I think that's very encouraging. If it's sustained, the Chinese have always been very cynical about these sanctions. They voted for them, but they've largely ignored them. And to the extent they're enforcing them now, it seems to me there's a real chance to inject a new element into the picture for the North Koreans. So I'm heartened by what you say.
One interesting aspect of the current situation with North Korea is the improvement, or actually the establishment of strong trilateral cooperation among the U.S., the ROK, and Japan. We meet regularly trilaterally at the ministerial level, both at the foreign ministerial level and at the defense ministerial level, with the Japanese and the ROK. And this has been important both in terms of showing the Chinese and the North Koreans that we're serious, in terms of deterring the North Koreans, and I think in terms also of putting a floor under Japan-ROK relations, which can be very volatile. So trilateral relationships sort of smooths out the pendulum swings in Japan-ROK relations as well. And my sense is that while especially recently, historical issues like comfort women have been very prominent, I think both sides, Japan and Korea, have been able to compartment that issue and move forward trilaterally on defense relations, and perhaps bilaterally on defense relations as well.
On that issue of kind of the trilateral cooperation, typically the U.S. and Japan have been very close in terms of both tactics and strategy with regard to North Korea. Sometimes South Korea can also be kind of back and forth in terms of sunshine policy versus tough policy. We now have a president who is less tough than his predecessor. Is there a concern that Korea, the new government in South Korea, could be a weak link particularly in terms of maintaining the pressure on the North that you mentioned, Mike, the importance of sustaining the sanctions and the pressure? What's your thoughts on that?
I'd be interested in Nishi's comments. I don't claim to have very much information about the new fellow, but that's the reputation. So it probably demands really a greater attentiveness to this issue during the early days of his tenure. But I'd be interested in your comment.
U.S.-Japan.
Whether we should be worried about the new government in South Korea vis-a-vis the warming up of the relationship, or encouraged.
One issue I'm personally anxious about is President Moon Jae-in's political attitude. I don't mean his attitude in general, but once he made a comment that the Korean side has the right to prosecute the Japanese companies for the forced labor cases. And then that issue was criticized at home, I mean in Korean side. And then next day, President Moon withdrew that comment. As a leader of the country, his word is very important, not at home but in abroad too. So his word is very important. Therefore, once the leader says something, it shouldn't be retweeted next day due to the criticism from home. Or in other words, he should think twice what he's going to do to the public. And this is, well, personally, what I'm anxious the most, because President Moon's position doesn't matter whether he's liberal or not, conservative or not, but is he really well prepared to manage things or not? And this one case, though just one case, but that was very sensitive issue to me, to understand who the President Moon is. That is my very personal comment about it.
Let me ask one more.
So perhaps it has a better chance of finding some practical expression now. I would hope that would be the case. That Quad does share internal political arrangements and a lot of geopolitical interests. So it seems to me there's a lot to work with. But we haven't seen the practical results.
What would be an example of a practical result that could come out of the Japan, U.S., India cooperation?
Well, I think it would be largely naval cooperation. Those are three countries with powerful navies, and naval cooperation is central to our security concerns in the Pacific. So that's the place I would look for.
Really, minor correction. The concept of Indo-Pacific is not originated from Japan. It's Australian.
I apologize to my employees.
And Indo-Pacific is the important comment because the ocean is basically one big entity. But at the same time, what I'm interested in is India's change of attitude. When Prime Minister Abe, in his first term, that was 2006, he appealed to the Indian side that we should have better security relations, while intentionally mentioning about something about China. But Indian side was reluctant to appeal, to answer to this appeal. Then when Prime Minister Abe is back 4 years ago, 5 years ago, Indians' reaction was remarkable. As soon as the Prime Minister Abe is back to the office, an Indian defense minister dashed to Japan, just only one-day meeting with the Japanese defense minister, which is totally unthinkable in the first term of Prime Minister Abe's days. So India's position has shifted dramatically, particularly in its context with its strong neighbor of China. Therefore, we'd better study what's going on in the Sino-Indian borders too. The interesting case is when Xi Jinping visited India, about 2 weeks before,